Conference, I think this Concentrix debacle reminds us all exactly why dignity and respect need to be at the very heart of our social security system, and I'm so glad and so determined that the Scottish Government is doing just that with the powers that are coming to it in the weeks and months ahead. But Conference, it is simply not acceptable for an agency employed by government to make wild, groundless fraud allegations against women in receipt of tax credits to which they are perfectly entitled, and to stop people's payments without a shred of evidence or substantiation. Let's just remind ourselves for a moment what tax credits are and who they're for. Tax credits are mostly paid to working parents of dependent children to top up low earnings and bring household incomes up to an acceptable level. Tax credits help ensure that children whose parents work in low-paid jobs don't grow up in poverty. And single parents where there's only one wage in the house are particularly in receipt of tax credits because they are more likely to be in poverty and more likely to have parents who are having to struggle to juggle work and family commitments. In Scotland, though, around half of all families with children receive tax credits, reflecting the fact that the minimum wage is not a living wage and that many parents, particularly women, work part-time when their bairns are wee. Women also tend to be overrepresented in low-paid jobs and still earn less than men on average. So the majority of those in receipt of tax credits are women, and most of them are working mums. To my mind, the actions of Concentrix have been quite disgraceful and nothing short of scandalous. Women have simply had their payments stopped, sometimes with no explanation or warning, but sometimes accompanied by spurious allegations about their personal lives. And I'm sure many of you will also have seen the media reports of some of the more ridiculous accusations, such as the woman living above a newsagent's shop who was accused of having a bidey-in called R.S. McCall. or the woman in Yorkshire who is a tenant of a housing association that was endowed by a Quaker philanthropist in the Victorian era. She was accused of being in a relationship with a Mr. Joseph Rowntree. But actually, it's extremely serious. My colleague Chris Law MP, who first raised this issue in Parliament, has a constituent in Dundee who has lost her home. She was depending on tax credits, like so many others, to pay rent. And unlike in social housing, where you can maybe have rent arrears without the landlord taking immediate punitive action, for people in private sector rented accommodation, often there is no debate if you're not able to pay your rent. And the consequences of that for that family and thousands like them are absolutely enormous. Many other people are now depending on food parcels, resorting to expensive lending, payday loans, etc., just to get by until they believe they can sort this out. People are depending on tax credits to pay their rent and put food on the table, and losing that income without warning, due process or just cause is causing untold distress and hardship to thousands of families. It's quite disgraceful that this incompetent fishing exercise has been allowed to continue, and that the UK Government has failed to reinstate payments for these families as they said they would within the timeframe they promised. Well, let me send a very clear message. The SNP MPs in Westminster will hold the Government to account on this issue, and we will continue to press for immediate action now to put this right. They also need to explain how this was allowed to happen in the first place. What on earth were they thinking? And when will they stop putting women and children on the front line of their failed austerity agenda? Conference, please support this resolution and send a strong message to the UK Government that they simply cannot treat people in this way.